All right, welcome everyone. We're so excited to have you today. We're just going to wait a couple minutes for everyone to join, so feel free to grab a drink, sit back, relax, and we'll get started here shortly. All right, it looks like we got a decent amount of people here joining us, so we'll go ahead and kick it off. Welcome everyone to the webinar Debunking the Top 5 Public Sector HRIS Myths. We're incredibly lucky to be speaking with our two guests today, who you see on your screens. They have many years of experience when it comes to human resources information systems and just all things HR public sector. So, but before I fully introduce them, I just want to go over some webinar notes here. If you have any questions throughout the webinar today, go ahead and plug those in the webinar chat. We will get to those at the end. So at any point, just go ahead and submit those there and we'll get to those at the end. This presentation and the recording will be sent to you via email, so you can reference it at any time. If you have questions after, feel free to reach us at this number on our website at any time. But let's go ahead and meet our speakers today. So as you can see, I'm Amy Harcourt. I'm a product marketing manager here at NeoGov. I have the pleasure of working with wonderful public sector professionals such as yourself, but I myself do not have extensive experience working in public sector. So the stars today who you will really benefit from are Tracy and Beth. So Tracy Knighton is the HR program manager for the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency in California. She's been with the agency for nearly 18 years, and within those 18 years, she's covered many different aspects of HR, including the management of their employee information, timekeeping, benefits, and payroll. So Tracy, anything else you'd like to share with the group about yourself?
No, just that I've been using NeoGov since 2007. So started pretty early on when I joined the agency, and I'm currently using, I believe, all of the programs. So I have a lot of experience with implementation and just the different solutions that NeoGov offers.
Awesome, thanks Tracy. And next we have Beth Mulvihill. She's currently the Director of Solutions Consulting here at NeoGov and has been with the company for over 7 years. And prior to working at NeoGov, she's had more than 9 years working in HR roles in the public sector. So Beth, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm really excited to be talking with everyone today. Former NeoGov customer and also implementation consultant here at NeoGov. So lots of experience in my background, similar to everyone on the call today. Things that you need to think about when you're purchasing any type of software, but specifically HRIS. So looking forward to our chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth, and thank you both so much for sharing your wisdom and experience with us today. We can't wait to hear what you have in store with us. So let's jump in and talk about the agenda. You likely joined us here today because you're searching for a better way to manage employee information, timekeeping, benefits, and payroll. Maybe you already have an HRIS or you already looked for solutions and haven't been able to find exactly what you need. Whatever the case may be, we're here to discuss HRIS for public sector. 5 common myths. We will provide you with some useful takeaways at the end, and we will wrap up with answering any questions you have, along with that SHRM code, SHRM code for the professional development credit. So first, we do want to start with a poll question, just to get an idea of what you resonate most with. So there should be a pop-up coming on your screen. Would you say that you resonate most with A, no system can handle public sector payroll needs? B, HRIS software is always hard to use? C, your HRIS and ERP must come from the same vendor? D, manual workarounds are required due to complex rules? Or E, support for your HRIS will be inaccessible or too expensive? All right. Okay. All right, so we got a lot of manual workarounds we're feeling. HRIS and ERP support. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for participating in that. Let's see if, Okay. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Beth, to get us rolling with the first myth.
Awesome, thank you. I'm not surprised to see some of those poll results. I think they were some of the same things that we talked about together as we were preparing for the webinar today. So we're going to kick things off and talk about the first myth. No, there is no system out there that can handle the payroll needs of the public sector. I can say confidently that payroll processing is one of the most complex parts of your workday. And I know, speaking from many customers, that one of the concerns that they bring up right away is the complexity of the payroll in their organization. And a lot of that, if you don't have a system right now, that can be because you're having to take care of things you see on the screen here manually, like scales and steps, leave donations, if you have multiple union rules, bargaining agreements, different divisions within those unions that cause complexity. Of course, FLSA is always a complex subject, effective dating, and then just being able to have a GL export that goes out to an ERP system that you might be using. So whenever you sit down and look at all that and all of the things that you think that you're doing on paper now, or you think you might be managing in even multiple systems that you have, of course it might feel like there is no system out there that can handle all of the payroll needs for the public sector. As we take a look at how to debunk the first myth and we look at some facts around HRIS systems, there are systems out there that are built specifically for public sector needs, like NeoGov's HRIS system. And as we dive into this a little bit further, I'm going to have Tracy come in and talk to you a little bit about, in her experience, looking at HRIS systems, what do you want to be looking for and considering as a public sector organization when it comes to finding a system that can truly handle all of those complexities of public sector HRIS organizations? We have a few things to look for and consider, as well as some questions to ask. But Tracy, I'd like to turn it over to you for a second. What do you think when it comes to starting out on the journey of looking at an HRIS system is the thing that you feel would be most important to tackle that kind of myth that there's nobody out there that can handle what we need to do for public sector?
Well, it took me 18 years to get here, and probably like a lot of people, we struggle with trying to find that niche, that organization that can really partner with public sector to really eliminate all the manual processing, because there is so much manual processing involved with entering a new hire and setting up their benefits and constantly updating those benefits when union policies change and MOUs change. And we're also very complicated as government sector employees. We have different funding sources, and we don't just operate linear. So it's important, and those funding sources change constantly. I know for us we do. So it was really important for us to look at a system that can really handle the complexity, the different org structures, funding sources, and really provide that streamlined experience for not only the end users and not only employees, but also the people who are administering and that are doing the pay changes and that are administering the system. So on the first myth, I think steps and scales is important, but also ranges, because ranges change, and all those things have to all kind of talk to each other, and that's really important. In terms of the effective dating, that's another area that is really important for us, because we need to get away from having to do manual retros and manual adjustments and wait to process COLAs, because the dates are not, they're forecast in the future. And so those are all really important. We have at over 200 funding sources here. So we are also required to capture those funding sources on time cards. And those funding sources have to change every pay period because we get audited. The type of funding that we receive from the federal government requires that employees are paid differently every pay period. And so those are all very complicated scenarios. We have also over 10 benefit groups. So we have a lot of different waterfalls that cascade differently based on what group you're in, or we're in California, so we have classic versus PEPRA employees, and based on where those two land within those groups, we have to be able to waterfall those accordingly. And we also have to report out. We have to report out to CalPERS. We have now a different financial system, so we have to be able to export the data and get those into our financial system and into a budget system. So we need easy exports and easy reporting, easy integrations with all of our benefit providers. We want a one-click kind of solution, and this is as close as we've been able to get to that.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I know we talked previously too, and in my experience, unions are also, something that public sector typically has to deal with. I think we had 8 unions where I worked before, and within those unions, of course, we had different units that had different rules. And so I don't know, I can't see everyone nodding on the webinar today, but in addition to everything that Tracy just mentioned, I would say knowing that we can support all of the different nuances of your collective bargaining agreements, holidays, step increases, all those different types of things that you're faced with throughout the year that you might currently be doing either on spreadsheets or, again, multiple systems right now. That's something to consider whenever you're looking for a system that you feel like might not be able to meet your needs. So thanks, Tracy. I think we're going to move on to the next one. And as we're doing this, I would encourage the audience to, if you have anything you want to add in as we're going through, like things to think about, questions to ask, if you have any others that you'd like to share to learn from each other, maybe you're going through this experience right now of selecting HRIS software, we'd love to hear just some things that you're going through so we can all learn from this together. So the second myth, and this is one I think that maybe because your processes are so manual and they are so complex, you feel like the software, if you would move to software, or you have software right now, that it's always going to be difficult for you to use. So, along those lines, some things that we typically hear when we're speaking with customers is that it can be very tedious to set it up. You might not be able to have all of the things as self-service items for your employees or your managers that you need. You have, as Tracy mentioned, hundreds of different cost centers, pay codes that you may need to work with, and you may have multiple benefit plans. It's very common within public sector for organizations to have different benefit plans for managers versus staff, and even within those, there could be nuances for full-time and part-time. So as we look at kind of debunking this myth and we move on to some of the facts, a lot of modern HRIS software is built very intuitively, and even the example that you're seeing on the screen here, being able to do things like from your mobile phone or easily from within the system, being able to allow your employees to go in and update their direct deposits with a couple of clicks and have that route around for approvals. Those are things that are fairly common within modern HRIS systems and definitely very intuitive and easy for employees and managers and administrators to navigate through. So let's go a little deeper on this one and look at some things that you may want to consider. And again, we'll have Tracy come in and talk about some of the things that she was looking for when she was looking for an intuitive system. So you want to pay attention to other customer reviews, references in your area talking about the usability of the system, or if you're watching a software demo with some folks like someone from my team, how usable it looks, how easy it seems to understand and navigate around. Any guides within the system? Are you presented with employee and manager dashboards or administrator dashboards that make it easy to get to the information you need? And any type of learning like we're doing today, free learning, articles, videos that are provided to just help any end users that maybe come on board after you implement the system. Those are all things that are important to look for when you're looking for intuitive software. Now, we have a couple of questions on the right-hand side of the screen that you may want to pose to vendors that you're looking for HRIS software with. But Tracy, in your experience, what else in addition to these or any of these that were most critical would you say would be very important to ask a vendor about when you're thinking of an easy to use system?
I think some of the things you mentioned is the access to employees, and I think it's critical, and that has been a critical experience for us. Simple things like accessing their time cards or requesting for time off or changing their taxes or direct deposit. I feel like what's happening now is that employees are more in control of their information, and they're more mindful about that information. So we're seeing a decrease in people, calling out, and they're seeing their balances. They're seeing it live. It's true time, right? So when they're requesting for the time off, it's deducting the time as they're requesting for it. So they're just more mindful. And so I think that's going to be, really important, is how much, we don't think about the employee and the employee's experience. We think about, all of our processes. And I understand that because we're doing the work, we're doing all the manual inputs and all the reports, but the employee experience is super important. And how easy is it for them to learn the system? How easy is it for them to access it? How easy is it for them to get help when they're struggling? So those are the things that I look for. And, that's the thing I've been focusing on, is the training and getting them very comfortable with it and owning it. And so those are the things that I think are really important for me.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there about the employees being more concerned with their information and having better accessibility to it. I think it's probably an offshoot of, everyone is on their phones and we're all used to being able to do anything we want from our phones at any time very quickly. So I think the question we have there about does the HRIS system support an app or mobile access able to complete things, that is what I think we're looking for, is I'll say like employee consumers or manager consumers. We want to be able to do things that relate to our employment and our families, our dependents. We want to be able to do those things very quickly and easily. So systems that provide that type of access that we're used to having in our day-to-day, I think that's very important as well when we think about ease of use and things being intuitive.
And just the benefit piece of employees understanding, who's covered. I can't tell you how many times we've had this situation where open enrollment happens and they forget to, change whatever levels they have, and they just, they don't have access to it. It's something they have to call HR about, or they have to look in their files. And so now that they have access, it's mindfulness, right? So they're paying more attention to what they have, what they're enrolling in, so they don't come in January and try to go to the doctor and realize, I don't have the right coverage, my spouse is not covered, or whatever it is, right? So they have more control of their information, and that's just powerful. And again, they're planning their vacations, or they're doing better with helping really manage their whole entire work experience.
Yeah, and employee engagement, what you're speaking to right now, I think that it's something that we might not be paying close enough attention to. And those are reasons that sometimes employees stay with organizations, because they do have this it's very transparent. They're able to go in and take care of what they need. It helps with their work-life balance when they're more in charge and have more visibility to their information and not having to wait for calls or forms to come back from HR. So yeah, I think a very, very timely topic as well right now. All right, well, let's move on to the third myth. And this is actually one I brought up to the team that's on the call today that I hear pretty commonly, even if I'm out in the field talking to potential customers, that your HRIS and your ERP must come from the same vendor. I think some of the reasons that folks think that is because you're thinking that you won't be able to have all the details of your jobs if you have two different systems. You might be concerned about position management, position control, and being able to see FTE counts, what's authorized to fill, what's open, what's vacant, and also related to that, all of the financial details that are connected to those positions, thinking that maybe if they're in two different systems, you're really not going to be able to get what you need in terms of budgeting and forecasting for the upcoming year. And then, of course, just having all of your employee information, you may be thinking like, well, that all needs to be in one spot. So as we dive a little bit deeper into this one, and we can share with you that you can, in fact, have your HRIS and your ERPs come from completely separate vendors and share the information between the two systems. Some things that you would want to pay attention to and questions that you would want to ask as you are considering how to make this work if you're all in one system right now, but maybe you're thinking of, like Tracy mentioned, a better experience on the HRIS side for your employees, managers, and admins. We would want you to be considering the ways that data can move, and those can be things like custom exports that are set up. For those of you that aren't techies on the line, API calls, which is normally automatic movement of data between to and from somewhere like NeoGov and another product, another vendor. EDI feeds, which are very common if you're a larger organization and you have benefits vendors that you need to move your benefit elections enrollments to, and also anyone that's unenrolled if you need those to go back and forth, and any types of true partnerships between HRIS systems and ERP systems. So those are things to be careful for. In addition, you want to know how well, and we're going to use the word integrate, the HRIS system integrates with other systems. So that goes back to the transferring of data. It may not be a true real-time integration, but there are certainly ways to move data between two systems and maintain all of the data that you need in a confidential way, and also get you what you need for your ERP. So again, we'll turn it over to Tracy. And Tracy, as you think about maybe having data in two different systems and some of the things that you'd want to consider, questions you'd want to ask, what can you share with us from your experience?
I think that going back to the setup and implementation, it really is going to be important that you have the right people in the room when you're setting the system up, especially if you're splitting up your financial system from your HRIS system. Because it's going to be really important to have the right type of reporting, to understand what is needed for reporting purposes. For instance, for us, it's going to be, making sure that we have the right information pulled in the right formats so that it can speak to the vendors. Like it can speak to CalPERS is one of the complicated reporting. They are very specific on how they will take the information over. And so it did cause a little struggle for us in the beginning, but had we had it set up right with the right people, I believe we would have been more successful early on. So it is fully capable. It's just making sure that you have, your IT people, the people who understand the various systems and understand the needs from a reporting perspective, so that it's not just a bunch of HR people or payroll people who really don't know. And they're going to give just data because NeoGov is not going to know. And so it's really important to have those conversations and take the time to really build those reports correctly.
Yeah, you made an excellent point, and I'm going to draw on my implementation consultant background here. There's so many times when customers are going through a software selection process and they don't have everyone that needs to be in the room as part of those decisions, and then you move to implementation and folks have questions about things or concerns about things because they weren't part of decisioning or scoping things out early on. So I would definitely add on this slide, if you're thinking of using separate HRIS and ERP, that as Tracy said, really important to have all the right people in the discussions from the beginning and make sure they get all of their questions asked, because this is a very complicated part of the process, and one that, in addition to everything else we're talking about that's complex, moving payroll data and connecting it to financial data, budgeting, forecasting, having that all work together, that's something that a lot of organizations are concerned with, as I mentioned, right out the gate. That's what they want to talk about right away when they're even thinking about HRIS. All right, let's move on to our fourth myth. And here we're looking at, like we talked about at the beginning, a lot of manual workarounds are going to be required because the rules are so complex. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to customers and heard them say, when we say to them, we can support public sector HR nuances and all the complexities, and they'll say, oh, ours is even more complex than someone else. So I think it's because when customers are using paper processes, multiple systems, sometimes there are still manual workarounds that you feel like you have to do because of how complex the rules are, or maybe just some complexities in your internal processes. And some of those things could be around your time setup, how you get your benefits information out to your carriers. As I mentioned, using spreadsheets on top of software because there's just some things that some systems can't do. So as we look at some facts around this myth, we know that there are systems out there for public sector where there would be little to no workarounds required. The example on the screen here is leave policies. Many systems will allow you to have as many different types of leave policies as you need, drawing down from multiple banks at one time. So they're out there. You know, you have to ask a lot of the hard questions that we're talking to you about today and things that you want to consider. But a lot of systems do support being able to configure for how you want. And I'll talk about the difference between configure and customize in just a minute. But you also want to pay attention to their history of working with other organizations in the public sector. So one of the things that I talk to my team about when we speak with customers is the difference between configuration and customization. A lot of vendors will use the word customization, but what you don't know behind that word is there's typically a cost. So if you're speaking with a software vendor, I would encourage you to ask how configurable the system is. Configurable means that you're normally able to do the setup with little help from someone like NeoGov on your own, very easy to use. There's no additional cost to set that up. We want to put the power in your hands to be able to go and do things and change things and configure things as you need, versus a customization. That means that there's going to be some work required on our side, some resources, maybe some development, and there's typically a cost associated with that. So getting comfortable with using the word configurable versus customization on software demos that you're on, I think that will take you a long way. In addition to that, you also want to hear about any support that we provide, maybe after you're live. And I'm going to have Tracy talk here about reports. I know she mentioned that early on at the beginning of the call, how critical it was to ask about the types of reports and reports available when you're thinking about not having to do a lot of workarounds.
Yeah, I will just add to the manual workarounds, just to give you an example. We have a little over 20 vendors that we use for various things, various benefit vendors, and anywhere from, FSA, dental, life insurance, various benefit plans. And they're all, except for one, AFLAC, integrated with NeoGov. And that has been huge, huge, huge savings for us to avoid all these workarounds. The time, I'm sure you all know, it takes to manually add an individual to 20 plus vendors or change it during a life event or during open enrollment is just so tedious, and there's so much room for error. And so that is really just kind of one click now, and our vendors are all kind of communicating with NeoGov. And the other spreadsheet on top of software, as an example, we would do gross pay adjustments manually. We would do exception reports manually for any different types of, pays, any type of assignments, out-of-class assignment, temporary upgrade pay. All those things were all done on a exception or gross pay. On-call premiums, so you're pulling those when you're doing time cards. So payroll is now, doing the on-call premiums on top of whatever overtime premiums. Those are all manual calculations, and those are, leaving room for so much error. and so much time that it's taking for staff to actually do this every single pay period. Manual time card entries, from vacation, sick leave, all those things that could be either manipulated or entered incorrectly. That's all gone. It's all true to time. It's true to what people are requesting. There's no more having to remember if it's a holiday, if someone was out sick. No more having to track any of that stuff. There's a calendar that it actually populates for you, so you can see at a glance, your whole team and when they're off, or your indirect reports. So it's just, again, a lot of no more, routing unnecessary paperwork and waiting for approvals. It's just really all those manual workarounds are just eliminated.
Yeah, that's great to hear that we're able to support. That's a lot of benefit vendors that you're working with, and we're able to support all but one. How important would you say? I see on the screen here. Tracy? Do you have folks working in like multiple positions, or they need to allocate time to maybe different projects, or tell us a little bit about that and how you feel like if that would be something important to ask about when you're thinking about not having to do workarounds.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on people's policies. We have people that can be out of class for a certain percentage of time, and it's also a percentage of the time that they're doing that time. And so there's so many different variations of different projects. I could have somebody that's doing work at one part of the organization for a certain period, and then they switch over to their other classification another period. So those things are really important, and being able to configure that so that we can go in and make those adjustments, so that it's not delaying their pay or whatever their situation is. It's really important to have that flexibility, and so the system definitely has a way to make your life so much easier when it comes to tracking and having multiple assignments, multiple positions, multiple pay structures. It's really easy to configure all that stuff.
That's great to hear. Yeah, and I don't think we talked about that early on when we were talking about myth number one, like there's a system that can't do everything. But I know if we could do show of hands here, I know probably a lot of folks on the call have people working and needing to allocate time to the things that we're talking about. So that's an area that I would just encourage you to ask about too, as you're looking for HRIS vendors. And then before we move away from this one, could you tell us a little bit about what are some of the reports that you would think would be really critical for someone thinking about HRIS software? What do they want to be asking about in terms of reports that a system should be able to provide?
So the most important one for us, because we have received federal funding, is the ability to show the different org keys and cost centers allocation, and being able to pull that fairly quickly, so that we can provide that to our auditors. That's really the most important one. I also think that it's important to be able to for the end user to be able to create the reports. I think that what we struggled with before we transitioned was just our reporting was, you had to be an IT person to know how to use Crystal report. We use Crystal reports. That probably dates our system a little bit. But we use Crystal reports, and you had to write the reports, and you had to know how to write reports. And we have hundreds. You could probably look in our system. We have hundreds already of reports from the payroll side to the HR side. And it's important that we have the ability to write those reports from a non-IT perspective, and be able to use those analytics for, decision making. Like I'm forecasting right now for negotiations. I'm in the middle of negotiations, and my boss asked me to forecast, what this is going to cost for whatever reasons. I have to be able to provide the data and quickly to make those decisions. So those are the things that I think are really important, is how you're going to use the system and how easy it is to write those reports, to create those reports, and to export them in a way that's going to make sense.
Yeah, excellent point. And she's right. We like to say within our product that our reporting is at the speed of need. You can go in and get what you need when you need it, being able to schedule things. And I don't know if you've been able to take advantage of this, Tracy, but I would also ask if I was looking at software about dashboards. Our reporting allows for creation of custom dashboards. So maybe your payroll administrators need a different view when they log in and they want to take a look at reports, keep an eye on things, and your time or benefit administrators, or even being able to share the dashboards if there was some reason you needed to share externally. Those are types of things that our report builder and analytics module allows our customers to do. And I would also ask about that if I was someone looking at software right now. I would really dig in, not just on the items you mentioned, but the custom dashboards and dashboard features as well. All right, well, we're coming up on our last myth for today's webinar, and that is around support. And I think definitely we see customers thinking that there's either not going to be any support for HRIS after it's up and running, or it's going to be a cost every time you call in and need help with something. So some things that people get worried about would be implementation and training, timelines, how long are they? Do you have another system that you're losing access to that you need to get things running up and quickly? What type of free support do you offer? And also, like we mentioned earlier, just the ability to go through and do trainings, videos on your own. So the facts around this topic are that there are some HRIS providers like NeoGov that include support within your contract, and we make it very accessible for your end users. So the example that you're seeing playing here is the NeoGov community. We do put all of our training materials at our customers' fingertips. We also have something called NeoGov University, where we offer free live training to our customers. And of course, you can go in and listen to past recordings at any time. The help menus take you directly out to get access to things. And that's not even talking about our amazing customer support team that we have here. So let's dig in this one and see what things we need to look for and consider. And we'll have Tracy take us through some different questions to ask around this topic. So just talked about the help menu visibility. Definitely asking about references, reviews. If you can find reviews online for the software, I would be reading those. I pretty much read reviews for anything I purchase at this point, even if I'm just going to go get my nails done. So I would, if you purchase like an HRIS system, I would encourage you to be looking at the reviews and then really dig in on those questions around support and charges. Where is support located? What are the days and hours that they're available? Tracy, what are some other things that you can share about either about your experience with NeoGov customer support or just anything else you want to ask as a customer if you are looking at software?
Yeah, no, I think those are some great points. Our legacy system did have quite the expense attached to any kind of support, and their turnaround time was weeks, if not months, to make any changes. So when we had, changes to benefits or, policies, it's a whole process. It's a whole contract and a whole process, and I was worried about that. And so that I spent a lot of time, asking about, what kind of support we receive post-implementation. What kind of support do we receive, immediately post implementation, and then long term, and training too. What kind of training do we have for staff? And so those have been really important. And I can tell you that for me, NeoGov has been just kind of a right-hand kind of partner. Especially with payroll issues. If it's an urgent payroll issue, everybody knows that, payroll, you cannot mess with payroll, and people's pay is, everyone wants to get paid. And that's the most important thing. And NeoGov has been available, day and night. I mean, I've been on the call with NeoGov at, 8 p.m. at night. They respond to payroll immediately. And they help us, and so we're not on our own. you know, and we definitely feel supported, and they will handhold you through, you know, the process of, you know, running your first payroll, your second. I mean, we're on payroll 19 now. We started payroll 7, so, and we're still leaning on NeoGov because every payroll is going to be different. You know, your first year, you're going to see something different. We had the third pay. I believe it was last payroll, and that was a whole other thing. So we had to learn a lot of things from that payroll, and so they were there and they helped us through that, you know, some of those crises that came up. So, or crises that came up during that process. So they're there. They don't require additional money to help you with changing. So when I'm looking at vendors, I think that's really important.
Yeah, support along with configurability like we talked about earlier. So, and I will mention too, a lot of our implementation teams here at NeoGov and our support team, they are either former customers like myself, or they could be former customers from other systems. So a lot of our staff has a lot of background in public sector nuances and processes. And I think it makes it easier to talk to someone like we are today when that person has been in your shoes and really understands like payroll is important and we've got to get it fixed quickly. So I think that plays a big part in the excellence of the customer service that Tracy's speaking about that she gets here with us as well. All right, well, as we move along, I think Amy's coming back on now, and she's going to give us some takeaways and some other resources before we wrap up the webinar today.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth. Thank you so much. That was an incredible conversation. On top of all those insights today, you will also get example RFP questions. So we compiled a PDF of 68 just to get you started, get an idea of how you can really find that solution that's best for your agency. You'll also receive the case study. So Tracy's agency's experience with NeoGov's HRIS, a copy of the slides, and then after this webinar, you will receive a survey. If you have a couple minutes, we'd really appreciate if you fill that out just so that we can make sure we're providing beneficial information for you and tweaking it to better serve you. Then we do have a couple questions here, so feel free to keep sending them in. If we can't get to them here, we'll follow up, but the first one is, it's a little bit longer. So my organization wants to take employee maintenance, including benefits, open enrollment, out of our ERP and use NeoGov HRIS for that. We will still need to feed the HRIS data back into the ERP for payroll and accounting. Is this something that is complex? So Beth or Tracy?
Yeah, I can take that one, or Tracy can chime in too. It's not complex. It would be something that we would be able to, depending on what type of file your other system needs, we can either do it through a report that you configure, or that we help you configure, that exports out of the system, or we also have API calls that I referred to earlier to get some of those that information out of the system and into another product. So we can do it. And Tracy, anything you want to add to in your experience? Happy to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what we're doing. So yeah, it's definitely doable.
Awesome, thank you. Beth, does NeoGov have an ERP module or system?
We do not have an ERP modular system, but we do have some partnerships with vendors that we'd be happy to talk with anyone about. So we, at this time, our HRIS modules would be, we say everything from hire to retire. So it would be hiring, performance, development, and then all of the HRIS products that we were mostly talking about today, which would be core HR, time and attendance, benefits, payroll, and payroll services.
Thank you. We have a comment. Crystal reports, yuck, in all caps.
Yeah.
And then we have a question from NeoEd. So are there plans to develop an HRIS for education, or can education purchase NeoGov's HRIS? Beth, if you want to.
Yeah, that's a great question. So primarily when we developed the product, our focus was public sector and not education. And I think as our team learns more about the nuances of education, because that's where I came from. There are some very different HRIS needs when it comes to education, specifically around like workloads and contracting that that we know that there are people, there are software systems out there that do it very well. We actually do have a preferred partner in Ellucian that we partner up with for HRIS for education. But I do think, to answer your question, yes, in the future we will be opening up the market to education customers, but we're happy to talk with you now. We do have a couple of education customers that are using our HRIS system, so reach out and we'll see if we're able to help you or put you in touch with our partner.
Awesome. Thank you. And then are either or both of you going to the Ignite conference? I would love to say hello and talk to you about my organization's plan for NeoGov HRIS and working with our ERP.
Yes, I will be there. We'll both be there, so we can't wait.
Yeah, awesome.
You can find us both on the app already, I bet. If you have the conference app, I'm sure we're both in there. We're both speaking at the conference, so log in there and connect with us, and we'll see you either at the presentations, or we'll see you at the after hours events.
Absolutely. If anyone doesn't know, the Ignite conference is just NeoGov's annual conference. It's coming up in a couple weeks, so we will be there and would love to see you. I think that's all we have today. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We love sharing these insights with you and getting to interact a little bit with you. So we hope to see you at the next webinar, but have a great day.
See you at Ignite.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone.